Welcome to Aquatics by Nature. Today I thought I'd try something a bit different and try and actually record outside to show you a little bit of what's been going on with my tub gardens. I'm not sure how well this will work with the aircraft and the traffic and what have you, but we'll just have to see how it goes. Anyway, as you can see, there's already quite a little bit of growth appearing on these tubs, but what I thought I'd show you today is a few of the sort of the good and the bad things that are kind of happening as these little tubs are sort of actually evolving, as it were. Inevitably, when you set up any new tubs, you get the kind of green slime effect, which I showed a little bit in the previous video. Well, as you can see, I'm sort of quite pleased to say that the green slime actually hasn't really developed that much, although I think that was really more luck than anything else, because we've had quite a lot of rain here recently, and I think that's actually helped to try and actually lay a lot of the algae, or sort of sink it, as it were, so it hasn't really got much of a hold, which is quite handy, really, to be honest. It's not always what happens, and there's still plenty of time. If we get lots of sun, like it's a nice bright day today, that it may all go very slimy again, but we'll just have to wait and see. But I'll try and show you a few of the things that are actually going on in some of these tubs, as well as all the Daphnia and the other critters and things that I actually added to these tubs. A lot of wildlife actually comes in on its own. Now, I don't know if I can show you, I'll probably try and catch it actually, but there's actually lots and lots and lots of mosquito larvae, quite predictably, appearing actually in these tubs. Like most of these things, you tend to get a boom of these sort of things before you start, and there's also actually quite a lot of bloodworm in here, but I've actually been collecting the mosquito larvae and feeding it to my fish in my aquariums because they rather love them, so that's not a bad thing. But I know a lot of people kind of worry about mosquito larvae, but they tend to be, at least here in the UK, a sort of a temporary thing that you get an absolute mass of when you actually start a new pond or a new tub. But actually, as the pond starts to sort of settle down, you get these sort of more predatory critters move in, like the damsel and dragonfly larvae, and you actually find you start to get way less of those kind of things, and you get a much more sort of balanced ecosystem. But also you may sort of notice from this particular water lily, you can see the leaves are actually looking quite tatty. This is actually something else which happens certainly here in the UK very commonly when you set up a new tub, and it's actually a really good and quite an important reason why I never really actually break these tubs down from year to year. Simple reason being that the little larvae, which are basically just like a little midge larvae, which actually cause this sort of crazing effect you can see on the water lily leaf here, they actually only really come in new ponds, and again, once you get the more predatory larvae in, you get a sort of balanced ecosystem, and you don't actually get this problem of these sort of damaged and chewed leaves. Now, I don't know if I can find one that I can actually show you what they are, because they're quite interesting little critters to actually see. But you can see one or two of the lilies have taken quite a beating from them at the moment, but they do normally grow out of it. You can see some of the new leaves are much better, but I'm not sure if this will work, but I'll try it. A bit tricky with one hand. But if you rub your hand underneath a leaf with these on, you should see little wriggly worms. No, that didn't work very well. Let's try another one. Try and show you what they actually are. There's another one that's been quite badly chewed. But let's see if we can get a few on my hand. Yeah, there we go. Don't know if we can focus on that, but those little wriggly worms that you can see on my hand are the larvae that are responsible for it. But as I say, they're quite a temporary thing, although they are a bit annoying. But if you've got a nice mature water lily rhizome actually underwater, the plants will normally just grow out of it as things go along. So it is just one of those sort of temporary things. But there's a few lilies like this one here that have been really quite badly hit. But again, you can see the new leaf is actually coming through and actually not looking too bad at all. But it's still quite early spring here in the UK, but as you can see, the marginals are actually starting to kick off a little bit now, although actually I'll show you not everything has gone entirely smoothly. Not everything is 100% successful. I've had a couple of failures. There's one of the water canners here seems to have failed, so I've actually just potted another one to take its place, and the same actually happened with the umbrella grass, the big Cyperus. We had one there that actually failed, so again I've just potted another one to take its place, but all in all things are not doing too badly, just to sort of start things off. It's just an early spring thing, but everyone gets their failures along the way. That's perfectly normal. It's just something to expect, as it were. But it's quite interesting actually how the different plants, you can see some lilies are actually much less affected and are growing much more strongly than others, but that's really just different sort of cultivars and varieties that have different sort of levels of vigour, as it were. So some are much stronger and some are incredibly early. This one here has actually already managed to put up one little flower, which is extremely early for here anyway. Don't normally get flowers this early in the year, actually in the UK, as it were. But I'm hoping as these plants get taller, they'll look quite decent against the bed that I've built at the back, which is all full of kind of desert sort of yucca type plants, but it's going to be very sparse for a while because they're very slow growing, so it's quite nice to have some sort of taller aquatic plants in front of them, at least for this year anyway. And I don't know how long I'll leave these tubs here, but I'm sure they'll be here for a few years, because as I say, I don't like actually breaking them down. Once they're set up, they're things that I like to keep for at least a few years anyway. And certainly if I do want to move them, I will always try not to actually drain them out completely, mainly because it does avoid getting a lot of those annoying kind of larvae and things that chew your plants. And actually there's something really quite interesting and slightly annoying that I found a few minutes ago that you might find interesting. These little critters here, if I can actually get it to focus on them, these little devils, which are annoyingly early in the year, are actually water lily beetles. Now these guys are a really annoying pest because they actually have, that's actually a pair getting jiggy with it, as it were, which is not a good sign for this time of the year. But actually what they do is they and their larvae in particular, which are like little black grubs, cut these kind of tracks into your water lilies. That appears to be all that there is at the moment, but once they lay their eggs, which will be like little tiny clusters of little brown dots, then they'll start to hatch out and the bugs will really decimate the lilies. So I'm afraid those two I will be disposing of in a moment. But they're normally fairly manageable by hand, especially in tubs, not quite so easy in ponds. But spring is kind of the season for pests and things, in actual fact. There's a few different ones around. I'll also show you one or two of the other sort of slightly annoying critters that have turned up in some of my other sort of little tubs and things with lilies in. If you can see these much more sort of big chunks being actually taken out of some of these water lily leaves. These are actually formed by the, or done by the caterpillars of the China mark moth, which actually live in these little actual sort of houses that they build out of the bits of leaf that they cut off. They can be quite destructive, as you see. They can wreak a real mess of your leaves, but fortunately they're very easy to actually spot. The critters themselves, I don't know if I can do this with one hand, but I'll try and just peel this off here, which is a little bit tricky, but I don't know if you can see there. There's the actual critter who's responsible for it. Little caterpillar, nasty little thing, but all part of the wildlife though. But basically all I do is I just remove these by hand, and then I just basically leave them for the birds to eat. But they're just one of those things that you tend to get, and you get them quite randomly in actual fact, and I just, as I say, just pick them off. I don't like to spray things with chemicals or anything. I just leave them to do their own thing and just sort of remove the ones that I see, and they don't really cause that much damage. It's a bit more tricky in a pond because the access is not easy, but in a tub they're very easy to just remove as you see them. A couple of things that have rather surprised me when setting these tubs up is actually how much variation there is in the way the actual Daphnia has multiplied in different tubs. I'm not sure if the camera can pick this up, but this particular tub, considering the tiny amount of Daphnia I put in, is already multiplied to really quite a big level, and I think it's only about 3 weeks since I actually put it in, so considering it's been relatively cool here, that's sort of quite impressive really. But as I say, I'm pleased to say that a combination of that and the rain that we've had has actually managed to keep the tubs themselves reasonably clear, so I'm not getting lots and lots of algae, although there is, I don't know if you can see it in this one, There is a little bit of sort of blanket weed in one or two of them just in the middle there, but I'll just pull that out from time to time just as necessary. But until there's lots of plant growth actually in the tubs, inevitably there will be a certain amount of algae along the way. But hopefully next time you see this, it'll be quite a bit more grown up, and once the plants actually get a little bit bigger, then what I'll actually do is I'll actually do a sort of plant by plant, sort of what each plant actually is and how they're actually doing, so give you a better idea of what they look like. But I think at the moment they're still a little bit small to sort of do themselves justice to be able to show you too much on that, as it were. But anyway, hopefully that gives you a little bit more of an insight as to what's actually going on with these tubs. And I thought lastly, for those of you that might be interested, I'd give you a quick little sort of overview of what else is going on in my garden. So if anybody's interested in sort of slightly tropical looking kind of plants that grow in cold climates, then I'll do a little sort of wander around a little bit of what I've been up to here, kind of developing new areas of my slightly crazy garden. I've just built this sort of arid bed here, as well as the one that's actually behind the actual tubs itself, which is around the other side here. All that bed along the back there is all planted with very sort of arid sort of desert type plants, because although we're in the UK, this area in particular is actually a very low rainfall area. We only get about 2 foot of rain actually a year, only about 60 centimetres, so actually trying to grow jungly plants is a bit of a challenge, so we have to choose a slightly more arid variety. Excuse the gravel, this will be a little bit noisy here, so I'm just going to wander around a little bit just to show you some of the more established bits of the garden and some of the slightly underdeveloped sort of newer areas, as it were, around the other side. But as you can see, there's quite a few palm trees, although we get temperatures of around about -10, -12 Celsius here in winter. Some of them are actually really quite tough, as it were. But as you can see, a lot of the garden is actually really quite new. There's a few of these slightly more mature sort of palms and things, but a lot of it is still quite new and quite sparse, and is partly what's taking up a huge amount of my time at the moment. But all these weird and wonderful paths that wander around different parts of the garden, as it were. Got a kind of a sunken area here, lots of ferns and slightly more shady things. But yeah, there's an awful lot of work to be done yet, but still very much the early stages for most of this part of the garden. I don't know if the camera will work very well down here because it's really quite dark and shady this time of the day, but there's a few quite nice mature plants down here as well. And if you want to know more about how I maintain these tubs so naturally without water changes, chemicals or fertilizers, I'd be eternally grateful if you'd subscribe and give me a like. You can also check out my playlists, but most importantly, enjoy your aquatic exploits. Don't be a slave to them. Thanks for watching.